What is going on, guys? Noah here with Custom RC Mods. Welcome back to a new video. Now in today's episode, I've got a highly requested video, which is kind of a comparison between these two Mustangs right here, both from Flight Test. This is the Flight Test Mustang, of course, the original and the larger one. Then we have the Mini Mustang down over here. Today I'm going to try to give you the best full comparison for these airplanes. I've got build videos as well as maiden and other flight videos for both these airplanes on my channel. I'll link those below if you want some additional kind of content to help you guys decide. And they're totally different airplanes, however they look the same besides the scale. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into a few things right here while we're on the ground. First off, our battery. You can see right here on the wing we've got a 2200 milliamp hour pack right there for the larger one, and we have an 850 milliamp hour pack for the smaller one. And this is a 3S on both of these, and you can run 2S on this, and you can go even all the way up to 4S on both of these aircraft right here. However, this one needs minimum of a 3S right here. Now in terms of other little build notes, of course this one is a little bit bigger, so it runs off a Power Pack C spec motor, and this one over here runs off a Power Pack A or F spec motor. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we're flying on each one of these things, one of these planes right here, and we're going to go ahead and get up into the air now with the larger FT Mustang. All right, so the first plane we'll be flying tonight is the FT Mustang. We've got it all ready to go, do our control surface checks, rudder, and of course throttle right there. Let's go ahead and get this thing up in the air, launching into the little wind there is. And the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about how this plane flies is just how smooth it is. This is one seriously smooth flying machine, and I fly usually at about half throttle like I am right here. It's a nice little cruiser, borderline trainer model right here, especially if you use a dihedral, which I definitely recommend on this aircraft. I originally built this one without the dihedral to be more of a kind of advanced flying airplane, and I found that it has a very, very bad tendency to tip stall without it. So yeah, as a beginner setup plane, I think this is a very good model. However, I do have a little bit beefier of a motor. This is a Power Pack C kind of spec. It's like a 2218 Turnigy 1100 kV motor, so it's about the spec of the Flight Test Radial if you guys are looking to compare there. But yeah, it has all the power this thing's ever going to need and performs great on 4S. Now for the ESC, this is just a basic ZTW Beetles. It is a, I believe it's a 40 amp ESC in there. 30 or 40 amp will be just fine. And those are really nice, inexpensive ESCs that I highly recommend. I use them on all of my airplanes. But yeah, this plane is really a very graceful flyer. It's definitely not snappy by any means, and it's not overly fast. I guess for a larger warbird, I mean, it does have a decent amount of speed, but it's nothing compared to when you get smaller, like in the Mini Mustang. And you'll see that kind of in a second. This is totally different than the experience you'll get with the smaller version of this Mustang here. But it is a really, really nice flying airplane here. 2200, like I said, on that battery provides a nice long flight time. But I'm really happy with how it flies. If you guys are a beginner looking for a solid, I would say this is a good second airplane. There are definitely better candidates if you guys are looking for a starter. I think that this is going to give you a really solid total experience to have for your second airplane. It definitely gives you the chance to master your 4-channel control abilities. And other than that, I mean, it's just so graceful and smooth. I do have fairly high rates on this. However, I'm just using a very little stick throw and just cruising around here at about half throttle. And on a nice calm night like this, this is pretty much as fun as it gets. I mean, just doing nice lazy figure eights around myself, getting nice and controlled. I would definitely say, if you guys are looking for something to scale, I mean, this is not a bad option. Definitely as you get up into higher kV motors that are smaller, like race quad style with the higher pitched small props, like the Minis have, you definitely get into a less scale flying tendencies. But this one is about as good as it gets if you guys are looking for something foam board and scale. Now this build, again, I do have a full build video for this airplane, as well as a Mini on my channel, and I'll link that in the description below. But the build is pretty smooth overall. I'd say this one's a little bit easier to do than the Mini, just because the pieces are bigger and they're easy to glue, and there's less places for your fingers to get trapped, and mounting electronics is a lot easier altogether, as well as this one is swappable with the standard size power pods from Flight Test. So for the building aspect of this plane, I would definitely say, obviously it does take a little bit more material, but it is a little bit easier overall of a build because you have you know, more room to fit your hands into this fuselage and get it all built to spec, whereas the mini ones, the space gets kind of smaller and it gets more cramped trying to cram your servos into the fuselage, things like that. But yeah, in terms of flying, this is definitely as graceful as it gets, and this is so much more predictable than the Mini Mustang is. This one's flown great for me. It has a pretty relaxed CG, which the Mini, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that one, but that's pretty much the opposite. This CG on here is great for if you're just learning how to tune a center of gravity on an airplane. You're gonna have a good experience with this because you can kind of get you know, pretty shifty with it, and it'll still be at least a little bit flyable, so you can bring it down to the ground and make your adjustments as desired. But let's go ahead and bring this one down. I think you've probably seen enough of this. It's a great flying airplane overall, as you can see, and it does support landing gear as well, so you're into that kind of thing. The Mini does, I think you can use landing gear with it, but it's a lot easier, and it's kind of covered in the build video on this plane right here. Flare it just like that, and we've got a beautiful landing. Let's go ahead and switch over to the Mini now. Alright guys, time now to fly the Mini Mustang, and as I kind of hinted at before, this is a totally different flying experience. You're about to see that in a few seconds. It's a little beat up, I've crashed it a few times, and I'll talk a little bit more about that once we're up in the air. There you go, you can see that right there. This thing is about at least double the speed of the larger Flight Test Mustang. It's also very, very touchy and fast. This is definitely an advanced airplane. It's a lot of fun, it is, but definitely is going to be a bad experience if you're looking for a first flight test or just airplane in general. You're going to have a really, really bad experience if this is your first time playing or flying airplanes. I actually do have some gripes with this plane. First off, you need to get your thrust angle just right in order to get this thing to fly properly, and that is so annoying because you can see my plane actually pulls to the right just a little bit when I give it full throttle on a straight. With wings level. It's kind of frustrating on there. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Of course, I can kind of do a mix if I really wanted to, or just go back and hot glue and adjust my thrust angle on there. But you have to get it just right in the build process, so don't take that for granted. And if you're running a power pod that is not compatible with thrust angle, then you're definitely going to have to rebuild something or use a different motor on this because it needs a considerable amount of right thrust. The next thing that's kind of annoying is that this is a very sensitive CG. I actually crashed this a few times trying to get my CG about right, and I had trouble setting it from the factory. I had it set right where the build video tells you to set it, and it did not, you know, allow me to do that properly. It was tail heavy, and it crashed like that a few times, and I got it nose heavy once, and I wasn't able to pull up. So it's harder to bring back to the ground. It's harder to tune your CG in properly, but other than that, I mean, it's an excellent flying airplane once you get it all together. You can see right here, just a lot of fun. Zooming right over my head, and I like fast planes that are very maneuverable and controllable as more of an advanced pilot. So this plane is right up my alley, but again, for a beginner, I don't think that you want to stay anywhere near this plane. Definitely go for the large one, but this one, I mean, seriously, it's a lot of fun to fly if you're more into advanced models like I am. And now I am running a 6x5 prop on this airplane right here, and a 2207S, a 2100 kV motor from Sunny Sky. And yeah, I did a build video on this one as well. 30 amp ZTW Beetles ESC, Spectrum Air 6210, pretty standard. You have to run some smaller servos in this beast, just because of course you're running 4 servos, not just like 2. So being a 4-channel build out of this size, you need to run like 4.5 gram servos rather than the standard 9 gram, which are harder to find and probably ultimately drive your cost up. This one also has much less of a flight time than the larger FT Mustang on that 2200. This one is only an 850, and it uses a lot more power. Probably draws about the same, if not more, current. So keep that in mind as well. I am, like I said, running a 30 amp ESC on this beast right here, and that's kind of where I'd keep it, especially if you're going for a higher pitch prop like the 6x5, as well as just a higher kV motor in general. But yeah, we're winding down on our battery here. We got about 3-minute flight times on this plane, and I'd say about 10-minute flight times on the larger FT Mustang here. Obviously, like I said, draw more power, but I'm gonna go ahead and bring this thing in for a landing. It's a little bit harder to land as well. You kind of got to slow down, and it's a lot easier to tip stall when it's going slower. So just like that. There we go. Just got to plop it down like that. Let's go ahead and summarize now. Alright guys, so in summary, as you saw there, these are two totally different flying airplanes. This one is much more like a trainer and altogether a lot more smooth, and then this one over here is just definitely has that high power and touchy maneuverability that I have come to like as more of an advanced pilot. So both of these definitely have a place in my fleet, and even though they look the same like you saw there, they fly a lot different. So keep that in mind when you're deciding which one to build. Of course, like I said, all flight videos as well as build videos for both these airplanes are going to be in the link in the description below, so check those out. And yeah, hopefully that'll make your decision a little bit easier, as well as go ahead and feel free to contact me down in the comments below. I will be hanging around down there to answer any questions you might have. With that said, please consider subscribing. I love making these videos for you, and it's great to show your support. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.